to know that you are the same person showing up in the same way. They can count on you to have the same presence, the same compassion, the same understanding, the same calm. So make sure that you're behaving with a high level of consistency and predictability. That's one of the fastest ways to help the people that you're serving get their own self-control back. All right, so we're going to go through these one by one. Maintain a state of calm. Just like, just kind of in the popular culture, this idea about going to your happy place. You've all heard that, right? Maybe you even got one. You need to have a calm place as well. I mean, I'm all for happy places. But I will tell you, in the work that you do, having a calm place that you can get to is just as, if not more, important than getting to the happy place. So, in your head, picture what calm looks like. I like that slide. That's one of the things I picture. Calm means serene. Calm means nothing's moving. Calm means there's an infinity out there that I can draw on. So, get yourself in a place of calm. So, in order to do that, how do you manage your own anxiety? Remember I said emotions are contagious? If you've ever dealt with a person in a highly emotionally charged state, I'll bet you felt your own emotions rising. I know I do. You have to fight that. It's a normal human response because we're wired to be connected to one another. So the old kind of cliche about I feel your pain, that is true. It is true. If you're distressed, I'm going to feel some level of distress. If you're anxious and terrified, I'm going to start feeling scared. So I have to be aware that I'm catching your emotion. I have to be aware that what I'm feeling is a response to you. It's not something I am reading from the environment. So just be aware, anxiety can rise very quickly, even if it doesn't belong to you, even if it's caught from somebody else. It can lead to reactivity, which at its extreme is fight, flight, or freeze. You're just as likely to fall victim to that fight, flee, or freeze response as anybody else. So be aware that you're going to feel pulled to one of those things. You're going to feel to get out of the situation and distance yourself from this person. You're going to feel pulled to meet their urgency and aggression with your own. Or you may become immobilized and not know what to do, and you may just sort of feel yourself lock up. So be aware that is your central nervous system trying to figure out how you can survive whatever's going on, because your central nervous system reads it as a high threat situation to you, not just the person you're dealing with. That's an embedded survival response that's been present in our species for millennium. So know that you can't override it necessarily. Expect it to come. Don't be unduly alarmed by it, but know that, okay, I can't do any one of these three things. I have to maintain calm. I have to find a way to get my nerves to settle down. I have to be able to have an adequate response to this person. So anxiety, if you have these feelings building up, just like the person in front of you is too upset to think straight, and you know they're not thinking straight, you have to not let yourself get in that emotional state. Because when we are highly emotionally aroused, we are not doing our best thinking. I don't know how many of you have ever experienced that, but I know most of the worst mistakes I've made in my life have been when I was in a highly emotionally chaotic situation, didn't take time to manage my emotions, and made some bad decisions in the moment. So be aware that you can make things worse if you move too quickly. Maintain detachment. That seems really counterintuitive, and you hear this a lot in 12-step circles. Maybe one of the things you've heard about dealing with an addict is you have to maintain emotional detachment. Basically what this means is do not let yourself get caught up in the other person's drama. I used to have a button that said, "I refuse to star in your psychodrama." And I think that's a good mantra to just keep in your head. You know, you are not the star of their psychodrama, even if they invite you to be. And you will often get invitations to have a leading role in somebody else's drama. Do not accept that invitation. So don't take it personally. Stay in a professional role and demeanor, even if you have to think about, okay, what would a professional look like in this situation? And you have to fake it, that's okay. Faking it counts. But hold the role. Control your own impulses and behavior. It's better to delay at least a fraction of a second than it is to react. So give yourself time to choose a response, not just react in the moment. And practice your own emotional regulation and self-soothing. If you don't regularly practice calming yourself down, de-stressing yourself, managing your own emotions, believe me, in one of these situations of emotional uproar is not a time to figure out how to do it. You need to know how to do this. Yes, ma'am.
Linda, oh my God. This is so on point for me right now. You know, I've been told that I have this tone in my voice, my family members and friends, and so it's not malice or anything when it comes out. Mm-hmm. But it comes out very forceful, and so, and sometimes I do be in a state of anxiety and having to de-escalate myself. It just happened to me yesterday with a client, and I realized that clearly there's some cognitive things going on that's not right, and so it's like I had to kind of pull back and just say, okay, I'm not even going to go into this fight, and
good,
because I already know there's something wrong, and so I found myself freezing and just like, okay, just go.
Good. So you recognized that you were freezing and you went to detachment. You went to, okay, I need to pull out of this. I'm getting too pulled into it. Because if you find yourself freezing, wanting to flee or wanting to fight, you've been drawn too far into it and you need to pull yourself out of it. So it sounds like you did a great job of thinking like a professional. Yay, Phyllis! Yay, Phyllis! Good job!
That time.
But it's not easy.
No,
it's not easy.
Because you go on the other person's reaction, sure. And I'm talking to a client and it's like, are you sitting here in front of me? I'm looking at Jade and like, okay, is it just me and you in the room? Because she just wouldn't respond. It was like she, you know, looking up in the ceiling, and I'm like, okay, I know there's something wrong here.
Well, before it leaves my mind, because this is not in the slide, and since most of our employees are women, the biggest mistake that happens, it's verbal, but it almost counts as a nonverbal cue. Women in distress, their voice tends to go higher to a higher octave. If you will consciously drop your voice to a lower tone, that calms people down. We're hardwired to respond with urgency and reactivity to shrill voices. It probably goes back to a baby's cry, that a baby in distress has a very shrill, sharp cry. Women's voices tend to go to that register the more distressed they get. So you need to think about moving your voice down in register rather than letting it rise. And you had a comment.
Well, I was just going to say, when I saw your slides on this one, I said, oh my goodness, I need to be in there for this. I think for me, for the past, well, all my adult life, my circle of people, I've been the one that they come to. And when they come to me, often they're coming to me in an anxious state because something is wrong, So when you're the go-to person,
Mm-hmm.
you get a lot of this.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And I just I appreciate the information that you've given us, because again, when you go to person, you get a lot of this.
You do.
And so
You do.
not becoming engaged and taking ownership in somebody else's, it is very difficult, because these are people that you have relationships with. And so what do you do then?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great question. What's been helpful to me, and I'll just share some things personally that, in the hopes that they'll help you. One of the best pieces of advice that I got as a young therapist was a supervisor who said, let them own their problem. Do not let them give their problem to you. Your job is to help them manage their problem, to give them some tips, some strategies, support, encouragement, faith that they can do it. But your job is not to take the problem away from them, fix it, and then hand a repaired situation back to them. Because if they don't like how you repaired it, what happens then? Suddenly, you're the bad guy, you're the one who failed. Yes?
I find a lot of times you have to, especially with the clients that we deal with in FID, they have a lot of hard layers, so in order to reach them, you have to find a sense of, what's the word I'm looking for, relatability with them, but a lot of times I find it's difficult to be relatable with a client, especially when they're in a high emotional situation without yourself becoming emotional also. So do you have like any tips that would help with that? What, trying to remain relatable while not getting emotionally involved?
Good point, because you can't act as if you're detached. That's going to be read as cold, uncaring. It's going to make them get even more hyped up, and we'll talk about some ways to deal with that. Basically, what you want to do is validate the legitimacy of their feelings and perceptions, which is not the same thing as agreeing with them. It's understanding how they could see it that way, understanding how they could be distressed by this situation, and then asserting that I'm here, you don't have to do this alone, I'm going to do everything I can to help you find a way through this. I mean, you find words that work for you that fit the situation, but detachment is not the same thing as standoffish. And I think that's a great question. How do you remain emotionally available? How do you manifest caring and compassion and availability without becoming the star of their psychodrama? And it is a fine line, and frankly, the only way I know of to get there is through practice and processing these things with one another, kind of like we're doing today, to talk about, wow, this seemed to really work for me. Like, Phyllis, I really appreciate your sharing. I felt myself freezing, and then what I realized was I was getting too drawn into it, and I tried to get into a place of detachment that let me be available, but kept me from getting emotionally jerked around by the emotional roller coaster that my client was on. And so I think sharing things like that with one another, that's been very helpful for me. That's why I like peer supervision. I like hearing how other people have successfully dealt with these situations, because often other people have tried things I haven't that sound like they might work for me. So I think learning from one another is one of the best ways to get good at doing this. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think in some situations detachment is a good idea? Well, I guess what I'm hearing is like not being emotionally available when you're being detached is a good idea. Like yesterday, I had to dismiss one of our volunteers, but I wasn't the first one that had reprimanded her. I was the very last one, and there wasn't. It was the end.
Yes.
And so when I was talking to her on the phone, she was saying da 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 da, and my people pleasing. I wanted to be like, it's okay, we'll find somewhere else for you to place or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, my role right now is to end this, not to fix it.
You know, there's,
And so I just
Yeah.
said, I didn't say, I understand your problem.
No.
I didn't say anything. I just said, I've talked to your caseworker. Have a good day. Goodbye.
yes.
But that was very scary for me because that's not my natural personality.
There's an adage in parenting that says you cannot both discipline and affirm. You can't both enforce a limit and be compassionate and encouraging. Because if you blend those two, you send a double message. So in your situation, your job was to set and enforce a boundary. Thank you for your service. You are no longer part of our work at yada yada. And basically, your job is to just hold that line. Your job's not to be responsive, compassionate, available. You can be caring and respectful in how you set a limit or a boundary. I mean, you know, there's ways to terminate people that are more respectful than others, but your job essentially was how do you terminate an employee? And you are respectful, clear, and firm. You're not emotionally available. The relationship has ended, which is very different than dealing with someone with whom you're going to have an ongoing relationship, like the scenario, Julie, that you raised. So, end of the relationship for cause, that is not a place that you want to manifest emotional availability. And it's not a place that you want to excessively listen to their concerns. I think you did exactly right. You say, I'm sure that this is difficult to hear. Nevertheless, the decision has been made. We're grateful for your service to us, and we wish you well on your continued journey. Thank you and good day.
It's a lot easier than email.
It is. It is. But I would argue that that's not very respectful. I mean, I would argue that as hard as taking corrective action or terminating an employee or even volunteer is, I think it warrants a personal contact. I mean, I think at a minimum that conveys, I value you enough to show up and do this. Which is not going to be, they will not be grateful for that in the moment. I'll just warn you. But at least you feel like I did the respectful thing. I didn't just avoid the encounter. I showed up. I tried to manifest grace and respect. I was clear and firm. And they're not going to be happy with the outcome regardless of what you do. But that's a good, I'm glad you raised that example. All right, I think this is a great slide about maintaining calm. Do not be deceived by your senses. Again, emotions are contagious. You're going to feel a pull to become distressed. Don't be blinded by that. Don't be seduced by that. Don't be deceived by that. Just because you feel like you should sort of join the general distress and hoopla doesn't mean you need to. Your feelings of fear and uncertainty, even as the tempest may howl, just beyond lies a serenity that you would not find otherwise. So your job is to look for the way through the storm, to be the rock, to be the shelter, to be the constant in the storm. Don't let yourself get caught up in the whirlwind. Okay, so containing the situation. Rule number 1, things always get worse when the audience is present. That is an unalterable truth. When a person is distressed, the distress is exponentially compounded by the number of witnesses. Get them away from an audience. Even if it's a corner, get the person contained. Get them away from a potential audience and from additional stimulation. Other people will feed the distress. Remember that emotions are contagious. I'd rather deal with one distressed person than 20 distressed people. If you don't think emotions are contagious, watch a group of kindergartners when one child gets hurt and starts crying. and then starts wailing, what happens? They all start wailing. And suddenly, instead of one child with a boned finger, you've got not a good scenario. Respect the individual's personal space. When people are in distress, they can be a little unpredictable. Give them room to move. Do not get closer than about 1.5 feet without an invitation. And 3 feet may even be better. Kind of be aware. One way to read personal space is if they start backing up, you're too close. If they move their head away from you, or they move their body away from you, you're too close. If somebody steps back that you're dealing with, you should immediately step back. Don't jump back, move subtly, but that's a cue. People will cue you about the distance they want. Speak calmly, clearly, supportively. Women, drop your voice to a low register. You'll hear female therapists do this. It's not automatic. It's the result of hard-won training where people caught you when your voice went up and said, get your voice down. So remember that the register of your voice can escalate emotions. Women particularly, drop your voice to a low register. If possible, have the person sit down and drink a large glass of water. You're laughing. We have research that shows, particularly with males, they are able to regain emotional control fairly rapidly if they drink, say, a bottle of water. Keep bottles of water with you, particularly if you're dealing with boys who are in high affect. See if you can get them to drink. You will be amazed at the difference it makes. So kind of all those kind of old wives' tales or things your grandmother did about have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, here, drink this glass, let me get you some water. It does help. We have research that says it helps people regain emotional control. Yes, Brittany?
I was going to say even for kids, because I've been exploring ways to help my daughter in those situations. One of the things that we saw was like a bottle of water and you put things in it like glitter or, you know, things that move slowly, so that when they're angry and upset, they have to flip the bottle over and watch everything settle, and it's like a calming. So even just the water in general is calming for anybody. You know, we listen to the water sounds, or you might have the water thing in your office, but for kids, for them to, you know, flip it over and watch the thing settle will sometimes settle their energy. And then you can go into like, are you still upset? And by then most kids are, you know, over the tantrum or whatever.
Right. Good point. Give short directives rather than asking questions. People, when they're in a highly emotional state, cannot process a question. So instead of saying, would you like to sit down? Say, have a seat. Drink this water. Tell me what's happened. You would not think that it makes very much difference whether or not you phrase it as a question, but asking a distressed person a question can cause them to lock up because their mind won't process the question, but they will follow directives. And a fundamental intervention in crisis situations is give short, specific directives. When you're separating them from an audience, you say, come with me over here. Let's go sit down. Let's find a quieter place. They will walk right along with you. So giving directives is a good way to get people to respond to you and put you in charge of a situation where they're becoming out of control. Use active listening skills, particularly summarization and reflection. People in distress do not give you a coherent story. It is all over the place. They start in the middle, they back up, they go forward, they bring in tangential stuff. You feel like you're watching a bad Fellini movie. And so somehow you need to be checking with them to make sure you're following the story, what's going on here. And so you want to stop at intervals and go, just a second, let me make sure I heard you right. What you're saying is yada, yada, yada. Keep it short. Don't worry about getting it right. If you get it wrong, they will correct you. Don't worry about getting it right. And when they correct you, just go, oh, great. Go on. So, but make sure you are getting a correct understanding of what is happening or what has happened. Okay.
Linda, quick question. With the first bullet being the remove the individual from any potential audience.
Yes.
So when having a meeting with our clients, sometimes we have like all of the staff in one room. So myself and 2 RCs. Although the ideal, I guess, meeting situation is like the person who's, of course, in the client and myself or the client and 1 RC, or how would that best be done? Do you mean that in terms of the audience or someone who comes with them?
What you do not want is a distressed individual that feels like they have to track everything going on in the room. Usually in a team of professionals, if you watch crisis intervention with teams that are trained, there's always one person interacting and the rest of them are out of the frame. They may still be in the room, but they will disappear behind computers, or they will find a place to go to where they're not part of the action, but they're available. In case things get out of hand, they're available. But if you see first responders, there may be 7 police vehicles that show up, but there's not 14 cops talking to the person.
Right.
That never happens. There's usually one person that's running the intervention. Everybody else is considered to be auxiliary.
Okay.
And that's true of professionals too. When you work in situations where there are more than one of you available, that is fine, but one person needs to run it, because they're not going to be able to respond to 5 different people giving them directions and trying to be part of it. So you need to have a way of making eye contact, or maybe it's the first person that the distressed person encounters, but you need to quickly decide who's in charge, and the rest of you need to psychologically disappear. Does that make sense? Okay. So, sure. And so, just be aware of some body language, nonverbals that you need to pay attention to. Do not smile. People in emotional distress are in a very regressed state and they misread social cues. How might somebody interpret your smiling when they're describing what to them is a horrific situation?
You think that's funny?
Yes. Yes. Oh, so you think that's funny? How else might they read it?
Well, you're not taking them seriously.
Yes. They might read it as, you're not taking them seriously. You think they're crying wolf. How else might they read it? Sometimes they read it as condescension or arrogance and superiority, like, oh, bless your heart, this is what we all expected.
That you're taking satisfaction in their...
That you're taking satisfaction in their distress. So don't frown, don't communicate. Try to have a neutral expression. Try to look interested and engaged, but don't smile. Do not force eye contact, especially with men. Don't force eye contact. When women are having a serious conversation with each other, how are they doing that? How are their bodies positioned? How are they engaged with each other?
Face to face.
Yes, they are. What else are they doing?
Using hands.
There's often touching, they're gazing into each other's eyes. When men are having a serious conversation, how are they positioned? Typically. Yes, yes. Men don't sit down face to face and have these meaningful, deep eye contact encounters. They don't do that. They tend to sit side to side and stare straight ahead. So, don't force eye contact. Think about what your client needs. Be careful about touch. I won't say never touch a distressed person, but be careful about how that touch could be interpreted. Be aware that people are highly volatile. If you try to touch a child in distress, they may jerk away. They may see it as aggression. They may see it as an attempt to contain them. They may kick or hit or bite. So give people space. Don't touch, even children, unless they make some move to touch you. If a child moves towards you and wants a hug, hug the kid. Don't try to force a hug on them. And do not stand directly in front of the person. Why?
Combative men.
Yes, exactly, exactly. I will tell you the worst mistake I ever made in my professional career. It was when I was working for the IRS Service Center as an EAP counselor, and one of the employees had a psychotic break at work. And they had her contained in a room about a third this size, and called me up and shoved me into the room, basically. So, she's in the room, I get shoved into the room. Where am I? I'm between her and what? Yes, I'm between her and the door. She is maybe 2/3 my size, so I'm not too worried about this. So I make some really rookie mistakes. I stay between her and the door. We have a relationship from prior encounters. I'm trying to talk her down. She sees me as a threat. She rushes me. I kid you not, this woman's 2/3 my size, picks me up and slams me against a wall. And I slide down the wall, spread eagle, wondering how that happened. And then I thought, I bet I shouldn't have been between her and the door. That's a bad idea. So even people who normally would not behave that way, who normally you don't have trouble connecting with, in a high affect situation, they can feel easily threatened, caged in, and perceive you as someone who means ill to them. You know, that you are not in that moment who you were to them the day before. So just be aware that you want to stand to one side, stand like at an angle. Think about a triangle rather than like this. You want to be at one leg of a triangle. So you're sort of facing them at an angle, but there's room for them to get away. They got the whole third of the triangle. And make sure that that part of the triangle leads to an exit. If they need to get away, let them get away. You know, unless you think they're dangerous. If they're like running off with a weapon, you might want to intervene there. But you don't want to, as Julie said, make the person feel trapped or caged in. That can make things escalate rapidly. Okay, set and enforce limits. Remember, a person that's out of control desperately needs control. They need structure. Imposing structure will decrease anxiety. The highest anxiety occurs when people feel like there's no containment whatsoever. There's no limit, there's no structure, anything's possible. They have to be prepared for everything. So remember that imposing structure decreases anxiety, even if the structure you impose is something as simple as have a seat, sit down here, drink this water. Tell me what's happened. It's even better to say things like, take a deep breath and let's get your breathing under control. Breathe with me. Breathe with me. That's imposing structure. Keep it clear and simple. Keep it concise, focused, and to the point. Focused on the need, to the point of the need. Make sure the limits are enforceable. Make sure that what you're telling them to do is doable. Breathe with me is doable. Slow down your breathing may not be. They may not be able to do it on their own. And you, when you say breathe with me, you exaggerate your breathing. You let them see your chest expand. You let them see you take a breath and exhale it. Okay, so you exaggerate it. You help them regain control. Make sure what you're asking is reasonable and offer options that let the person regain self-control. That's how people gain confidence that they can live through these situations. They're able to regain some control. They're able to feel like, okay, I can meet this. I can stay present. I can face this. But they're probably not going to feel that way unless you are giving them directives about how they regain that control. Did you comment, Brittany?
I had a question. Could you give an example about what you mean by give options? Or maybe just a situation on what language you would use?
You can do things like watch their response. You might, for example, sometimes you can intervene too fast. Like, for example, you could say, sit down, and they are not able to. They look panicked. You can tell by their response to your saying, have a seat, that they don't feel like that's going to be helpful. In fact, it's ratcheting them up. Then you say something like, that's okay. We don't have to sit. Like, you'd rather stand over here, and let's get your breathing back under control. Let's take a moment.
Oh, where would you like to sit? Would you like to?
I don't think I'd give the, you could give a choice. You could, but again, you have to be careful with, if you're going to use a question, don't give more than 2 choices. Should we talk here or in the next room? So give them, watch their response. If you give them a directive that doesn't work, don't panic, just do something different. For example, what do you want to do first? Get their breathing under control or have them drink water?
Breathing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you give them a bottle of water and they're going, you go, hold it. Breathe with me. Breathe with me.
And I think I see this often, especially when I go to Persian Park with the kids there. It's a whole different ball game because, like you said, there's no structure. And when you come to try to provide structure, it's difficult because they're not used to it.
Right.
And you have to just continue to reinforce, redirect, and all of that.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
is huge.
Yes.
You got to get some structure.
You do. Lack of structure is the #1 reason that people get into these distressed states.
Yeah.
And actually, we have research that says the #1 reason that people get better in a psychiatric hospital, or actually hospitalization in general, is the imposing of predictable structure. So if you do nothing but make someone get up at the same time, eat at the same time, go to group at the same time, go to bed at the same time, they get better. So structure is very important. Okay, we talked about active listening. Just wanted to show you some, this is a good graphic, I think, that helps you understand whether or not you are effectively using active listening. So start with, do I understand you? Nope. All right. Do I want to understand? Okay. So, and you do. You have to keep yourself in a place of responsiveness and availability, because it's possible to say no to this situation and okay. So failure to understand, you're not going to get any further. So you've got to gear yourself up for this. You've got to say, all right, I want to be of service here. I'm making an intentional choice to walk into this. You've got to choose. You can't fence straddle on this. Eh, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Okay? Deciding, nope, I'm not up for this is better than kind of wobbling on the fence, because at least somebody else can step in. All right, do I understand you? Yes. Yay, okay. But no. All right, do I want to understand? Yes. Am I trying? Yes. Am I listening? Not just to what's being said, but to the nonverbals. Might be something as simple as, did this happen this morning, or did this happen after lunch? Am I rephrasing using my own words? And that might be helping people identify what they're feeling. Sounds like that really scared you. Because understanding what you're feeling is a first step in emotional regulation. If I don't recognize that I'm scared, I may just keep acting like I'm mad. Because if I'm scared, I need something different than if I'm mad. Okay, so then, am I rephrasing, and are you getting confirmation that you truly understand, which again, that is successful active listening. So I thought that was a pretty cool slide to just illustrate the process. Okay, so actively listen. Pay attention, not just to words, but to the feelings under the words and to the body language. Is the person shaking? Are they having trouble standing up? If they are, for sure, get them to sit down. People do faint in these situations. People do pass out in these situations. That will not improve either you or the person's experience of the situation. So if their knees are wobbling and they're really shaky and their voice is really shaky and you think, oh, they're going to go down any second, you get them down before they fall down and hit the floor. Show that you're listening. Use your own body language to communicate the things that you want to manifest to them. For example, is there a way to use your body to exhibit calm? Sure there is. What are some things you're doing with your body to communicate that you're in a place of calm?
You rest your hand in your lap.
Right, you're not doing this wildly, which I'm prone to do during presentations. So you're not doing the Linda Oxford version of communication. You're calm. Your body is not in frantic motion. What else are you doing to communicate calm? Yes, you're speaking calmly. Deliberately slow down the pace of your words. It's a hypnotic technique that forces people to calm down. If you're talking rapidly, then I can listen rapidly. And I can kind of get myself in that same pace. If you're talking very slowly, I have to get myself slowed down to follow you. Again, this is one of the do as I say, not as I do, because unless I'm really thinking about it, I'm prone to be one of those hyperverbal kind of people. So I try to be better with clients. So you want to show that you are giving your attention, that you're available, that you're responsive, that you're calm, that you can hear this stuff. That this is not going to rock your world. You're not going to fall over in a dead faint out of shock or fear. You want to show that you are not only calm, but you're confident, that you are adequate to the situation. And so being able to keep your body relaxed, being able to not excessively move around, sort of think like a rock. I mean, seriously, you sort of think like a rock. Okay, this person is all over the map. They need something to hold on to, at least psychologically. So think about a compassionate rock. I have a good friend who is my compassionate rock. And the whole world can be in flux, and this guy won't move. So, and I often think, oh boy, that is my rock in the storm. And I've noticed that's the first, when my life is out of control, that's often the first friend I call. So you want to nod occasionally, have a responsive, don't have a stone face expression, back to my analogy of being a rock. Do move your eyes and your lips and your face muscles. Let them know they've got your attention, that you're engaged. You want to encourage the speaker by doing things like nodding your head, inviting more comment, provide feedback, avoid judgment, do not make judgmental statements, do not interrupt. It will not be helpful. They will simply start at the beginning where you interrupted and you'll have to go through another 20 minutes. Let them get it all out. Then when they run out of steam, you can start asking clarifying questions or offering summaries. So clarify, summarize, and reflect. But you might as well, as long as they're on a roll, just let it roll. Because often if you interrupt them, their only choice will be to start all over again. And ain't nobody got time for that. Oh, I'm being filmed. No, just edit that piece out. The word listen contains the same letters as the word silent.
Yes.
You should remember that. Sometimes silence is the most powerful thing you can do, to be available, responsive, and silent. That you can hear this, you can let them get it out, you're not going to be undone or rocked by it, and you can hear it. So don't underestimate the power of silence. This slide just talks about various nonverbal communications that you need to be aware of. Can be eye movements, how close or distant you are, your facial expression, whether the level of body contact, your posture, whether you're laughing or what sounds you're making, your head movements, hand movements. Most of this we've already talked about, but there's a lot to track on. There's a lot to watch, both in yourself and the person you're dealing with. So, what are you trying to say? Communication is more than words. Nearly 75% of what we communicate to one another is nonverbal. It's coming out of body language and nonverbal cues. So just be aware that most of what the person picks up from you will be what you are doing non-verbally, not what you're saying. Okay, what you don't say that counts. So again, learning to read and influence people using non-verbal communication. So just think about what you communicate by how you stand or sit, by the expression on your face, by what you're doing with your hands, your head. And you can see some of the, there's someone who's standing like this, does that communicate skepticism? Like, I think you're lying. or maybe I'm lying. I'm trying to fake you out. So just think about how people can interpret various stances. And then, again, you probably have seen micro-expressions and the fact that universally there are facial expressions that we read as expressing particular emotions. So be careful about what you let yourself feel, because it will show on your face. I guarantee you, if you feel disgust, it will be nearly impossible to mask it. If you feel contempt or arrogance, it will be nearly impossible to mask it. So don't just watch your face, check yourself internally. Am I being judgmental? Am I feeling put off? Am I feeling superior or arrogant or disgusted? Do not let yourself go there. You need to be able to keep yourself in a healthy emotional place. Again, it takes practice, it takes confession, it takes working with each other. Be consistent. Take care of your own feelings first. If you're not in an emotional place to deal with a distressed person, you're not going to be effective. Get yourself settled first. Be calm, compassionate, and curious. Be careful about using physical touch. Accept the person's feelings and perceptions. You do not have to agree with their interpretation, but it's important to understand what it would be like to be in their shoes and see it the way they see it. You don't have to see it the same way, but you have to understand how they got there. Be responsive rather than reactive. Give yourself time. You don't have to jump right in there. Urgency can be as contagious as emotions. Just because they think something has to happen right now, this second, doesn't mean it does. Maybe you've got 2 more seconds than they think you do. Maybe you've got 2 more days than they think you do. So give yourself time to respond. Being responsive again means knowing what is needed. Being confident that you understand the situation and you know what is needed before you try to deal with it. If you don't understand the situation and you don't know what it's going to take to deal with it, you should not take action. You could make things worse. Take the time you need to be confident that you understand, to be confident that you have a good idea about what's needed. Okay, I'm going to since we're nearly done, I'm going to let you go through these last slides on your own. These are just suggestions about what to do or not do, what to say or not say to a person in distress. They're not absolutes, they're just guidelines. So I will leave you to go through those 3 slides on your own. And thank you so much for coming this morning. The slides are in the shared drive if you would like to review them. I know that Nicole has made these lovely full-color handouts with note spaces available for your files. And again, as we always say, if you have thoughts, recommendations, requests about what topics you'd like to see presented in Agape University, please let Nicole know or me know, and we will do our best to make sure that these presentations are timely and responsive to needs that you encounter in the work that you do. So, thanks again for being here.
And guys, your evaluation, if you can give those to Brittany, and we'll take it.